Now we will have a video address that was specifically recorded for Kyiv Security Forum by Executive Vice President of the European Commission for Technological Sovereignty, Security and Democracy. Her name is Hanna Virkunen. Пані і панове, щиро дякую панові Арсенію Яценюку, голові Київського безпекового форуму, за організацію цього заходу та за його люб'язне запрошення. Ви, українська молодь, є майбутнім нашої і чудової країни. Ваша безпека є надзвичайно важливою. Кілька тижнів тому я побувала в Києві і була надзвичайно вражена мужністю України та вашою стійкістю й опірністю. Сила, яку ви продемонстрували, значною мірою базується на вражаючих технологічних можливостях та талантах України, зокрема у сфері кодування. Програмування. Суверенітет і опірність залежать від висококваліфікованої робочої сили. Україна продемонструвала це нам усім і стала для нас прикладом для наслідування. У Європейському Союзі ми поставили собі амбітні цілі в цій галузі. Принаймні 80% населення повинні мати базові цифрові навички. І ми прагнемо до 2030 року мати спеціалістів в галузі комунікаційних технологій. З кодуванням та алгоритмами працювати недостатньо. Ми хочемо, щоб молоді люди могли орієнтуватися та творити в цифровому світі. Ми спостерігаємо зростання важливості технологій подвійного призначення, як от штучний інтелект і мікрочіпи, та їхню ключову роль для нашої оборони. Те саме стосується програмування. Окрім інвестицій у навички наших громадян, ми також повинні прагнути збільшити інвестиції в технології подвійного призначення. Мої служби та я особисто підтримуємо Україну у подоланні викликів, пов'язаних з агресивною війною Росії, зокрема з точки зору технологій та кібербезпеки. Ми співпрацюємо
building in the country, including through the working arrangement between the EU Cybersecurity Agency and the Ukrainian Cybersecurity Authority. This is a mutually beneficial exercise, as the EU can learn a lot from Ukraine's experience in fending off cyber threats. We are also ready to facilitate Ukraine's access to the EU Cybersecurity Reserve for rapid response and immediate recovery. Another important area of our cooperation is high-performance computing and artificial intelligence. We are also supporting Ukraine's integration into the digital single market. We will soon welcome Ukraine in the EU roaming area. We are looking forward to integrating Ukraine into our work on the EU digital wallet, and we are supporting Ukraine's early integration into EU's legal framework for digital services and markets. We are also promoting Ukraine's participation in EU-funded digital programs. Our joint efforts aim at sovereign and prosperous Ukraine, able to offer to its youth and all its citizens security and the opportunities they dream of and deserve.
Ми прослухали спеціальне відеозвернення.
This was a special video address specifically recorded for Kyiv Security Forum by Hanna Virkunen, Executive Vice President of the European Commission. And we are moving on to our next panel. It is called Code of Diplomacy. We are welcoming our esteemed panelists, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the French Republic to Ukraine, Gaël, Veyssiere, Your Excellency. Then we have Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Sweden to Ukraine, Mr. Martin Åberg, Your Excellency. Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Latvia to Ukraine, Andrejs Pildegovičs.
Пані надзвичайний повноважний посол.
Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Republic of Lithuania to Ukraine, Inga Stanytė-Toločkienė. Your Excellency, welcome.
Отже, пані і панове,
So, ladies and gentlemen,
в цій панелі
we are going to discuss now support of Ukraine's technologies and innovations by our partner countries, by those who stand with us, who support us, particularly when it comes to the new program recently launched, Pearl, funded by the EU member states and 2 more countries that are not members of Australia. 2 days ago, Australia and New Zealand announced that they would be part of the Pearl program and contribute to it. The Pearl program finances priority requirements of Ukraine. It is funded by European NATO allies, and it plans to raise till the end of 2025 a record-breaking amount of 5 billion. Each of the countries that are represented in this panel today have been with this program since the first day. My first question goes to the French ambassador, Mr. Gaël Veyssiere.
Робити трошки повільніше, тому що у нас здійснюється паралельний переклад. Отже,
I'll do it slower because we have simultaneous interpretation. Your Excellency, France is an extremely important partner of Ukraine, and it was proved recently during the 4th state visit of the President of France, Mr. Macron, to China. And President Macron said that the purpose of his visit to China is the effort to stop the war in Ukraine, and he addressed the leader of China, Xi Jinping, with the request to put pressure on Putin to bear and to stop striking the energy system of Ukraine. In your opinion, Your Excellency, how this public diplomacy vis-à-vis China, India and other countries of Global South can be successful?
Okay, does it work? So, just a few words to say how happy I am to be here on this KIF Security Forum. I'm a great fan of this forum. So, thank you very much for having me today. About your question, actually, I do think that it's key to engage with international partners, and I don't really like the expression, but Global South. Actually, there is a battle of narrative. There is very strong Russian narrative saying, well, you know all these scraps, but Ukraine is losing anyway, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, in our partners in the South, there are very strict commitments to global rules, including sovereignty and so on and so forth. But at the same time, well, there is a will to accommodate with Russia, and sometimes there are willingness to oppose the Americans, if we would say things a bit bluntly. So definitely we need to engage with them, and this is what President Macron is doing in his state visits actually right now in China. Does that mean that there is a reasonable chance to convince China of our vision, which is of course that we should fully support Ukraine on this? Well, unfortunately, I think that would be too ambitious. But at least, I mean, it's very important to exchange and to be convincing, to explain to China that their interest is definitely not, certainly not a Russian victory, God forbid, but also that actually they have something to lose in this, and that because they don't support directly the Russian military, but letting some of their innovation capabilities, some of their so-called private companies actually supporting the war effort of Russia is actually detrimental for the stability that China is so interested into, and actually is detrimental for China itself. We have, of course, same discussions with other big partners, India in particular, which is a bit easier because they have a more neutral view on the war. But also you have to engage with South Africa, you have to engage with other African countries, Brazil, Argentina, and so on and so forth. So there is a huge diplomatic effort on this. And I must say that the is actually one of the key things on which we have to engage also these global south countries, because we know that Russia is using massively these kind of technologies, including from these partners and others, and we have to work on that. Maybe I should stop here so that we can have more.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. I think we will have more time just for questions from the floor. І своє наступне запитання я адресую.
And my next question is to the ambassador of Sweden in Ukraine, Mr. Martin Åberg. Today we see that Russia has increased the number of hybrid attacks with the use of drones who actively spy, including over the territories of NATO. What should NATO and Sweden in particular would focus on to counteract as good as possible the technologies of Russia, the technologies which are being developed very rapidly and pose a direct threat to NATO countries, primarily to countries of Northern Europe and Scandinavia that Russia is focusing on, obviously.
Thank you for the question. First of all, I think that your question has already been answered by one of the earlier speakers, because the country that is the very best today at detecting and shooting down drones is actually Ukraine, which means that we need to work together, which again builds on the whole premise of this conference, as well as on this panel. We need to work together to resolve these problems. Beyond the pure detection, we also have the challenge of attribution. We don't really know who is sending them up all the time. They circle around our airports, they circle around some of our sensitive objects, but it's not always clear who sends them up. The drones can be either something, for example, the ones that flew into Poland were clearly the same kind that fly over Ukraine. Some of the ones circling around strategic Swedish objects are normal Chinese-made civilian drones, and it's not quite clear who sends them up there. So I think we need to work together in order both to improve the detection, but also in order to bring them out, and in that way perhaps also be able to attribute them.
Thank you, Ambassador. Моє наступне запитання надзвичайному повноваженому послу Республіки Латвія.
Thank you. My question to Andrejs Pildegovičs. Your Excellency, in May this year, I attended the summit of drone, which was held in the capital of Latvia, and I was impressed how the school children in your country are engaged in developing drones, assembling drones, using drones, and this clearly shows the strategy which the government of your country sees in this work. Since you are in the zone of threat, which Russia obviously is going to ramp up in your region, what do you think Russia will be trying to focus its main attention on in order to undermine your national security? And how can we make up for the advantage of the Russians which they are gaining on the battlefield in Ukraine?
Here at the Security Forum, indeed, Latvia is very much familiar with threats, hybrid threats, what you are alluding to. We were one of the first countries in the region facing cyber attacks, countries facing systemic hybrid threats in terms of disinformation, misinformation. And indeed, I think this is one of your slogans, always to be one step ahead of the enemy. This is what we are trying to do in our region. And exactly, we are trying to partner with the like-minded countries. We are trying to expand our cooperation with Ukraine. We are one of the leading states in the drone coalition, and I think over the 2 years we have shown that this family of partners can grow beyond Europe. We have New Zealand, Australia, Canada in this effort. And we are trying also, not just in declarations, but in practical terms, learn from Ukraine as much as possible. We train about 4,000 Ukrainian soldiers in Latvia, but we are trying to simulate something similar with another direction. And you Ukrainians are one of the best trainers in that regard. So it's an equal partnership. And I think I support what the French ambassador said. We have to use every platform globally. We fight, we are in Europe. We clearly see Ukraine as a part of European, EU, NATO space in the future. We support each other in every possible way. We support AI development, which has been alluded as well here, including AI application of the languages. We are living in English space, speaking broken English to each other, but we cannot forget our national languages. So this is also part of our effort with our companies. And of course, physical presence here in Ukraine, I think it's very important for the business, for the military, for technology experts. And I think in the future also more joint projects, joint production in the Baltics, here in Ukraine. We have to move faster than our adversary. And this is the commitment from Latvia, from business, from the government, from civil service. Thank you.
Дякую, пане посол. І пані надзвичайний повноважний посол Литовської Республіки.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Inga Stanytė-Toločkienė. We've seen the use of hybrid mechanism against your country, like the use of illegal migrants from the territory of Belarus into your country. That was a purposeful operation of the Russian special services. In Ukraine, we once built a wall which was unique and built by Mr. Yatsenyuk. He was criticized for that by something, but I think it is a technological wall like that which should be one of the best ways to counteract illegal migration, apart from other things. In your opinion, what you will have to encounter in the near future? If subversion groups, for instance, under the guise of illegal migrants, will be more actively used by Russia in the future?
Maybe I'll start by really thanking for having me here today, because this audience, to me, it represents really the best of Ukraine, the engine, the current engine and the future engine of both its resilience and its innovation. And in response to your question, basically, yes, this wave of instrumentalized illegal migration, it has been something Lithuania used to deal several years ago. Basically, right now, we feel like we are already past that, even if some efforts continue, but building of the physical wall, actually, or fence has helped a lot. Currently, we are facing yet another very creative method of actually trying to distract us, to maybe divert our attention, to move our attention to things which are of secondary importance, or should be of secondary importance in the face of the threats we are facing. So air balloons. Lately, what Lithuania and Vilnius is dealing with is this orchestrated yet again in a very clear systemic manner wave of air balloons which fly very high in the skies, and that's why it's pretty difficult to use ordinary anti-drone solutions. because that's something completely different, and which disrupts then civil aviation, which makes, because Vilnius is very much comparable with Kharkiv in terms of its geographic location, 40 kilometers from the border. So Vilnius International Airport, well, quite often has to stop its operation because of those air balloons. So that's what we are dealing with right now, also engaging with our Ukrainian partners and looking for joint solutions, because to me, working and living in Ukraine, it's very obvious that innovation is being developed close to the front line and not somewhere else. So yes, in terms of the future, it's difficult to predict, because really those neighbors of ours, basically they have unlimited creativity when it comes to new methods, how to disrupt our normal lives. So it's difficult to predict what we are facing in the future. What is very clear to me, though, is that at this point of time, Russia really looks, Russia and Belarus along, they look emboldened. Most likely they feel or they think or they anticipate that with one more maximum push, one more maximum pressure on Ukraine and its allies, they can actually break our will to resist. And then the only thing we must do actually is to prove that the contrary is the case, that we are here to stay, that we will continue what we do, that we will only increase and step up our joint collaborations, because for a country like Lithuania, which is not a big country, let's say, which is on the same front line essentially, which is also trying its best to boost right now its own defense, it's very obvious that also we need to invest as much as possible into Ukraine's defense industry, and then into developing our joint partnerships as well. Because in the future, that's my firm belief, Ukraine will not only be one of partners in terms of securing Europe, but one of main pillars of the future European security architecture. Unless we fail it completely, and I deeply believe that we will not fail it. Yes, every drone which is created, also created by this generation in shelters, in garages of Kiev, every piece of code you are creating to improve accuracy of artillery, every innovation you come up with is also protecting my country. That's the firm belief on our side, and that's why, apart from boosting as rapidly as we can our own defenses, we are also one of those countries which are investing using, let's call it Lithuanian version of the Danish model, investing into Ukraine's defense industry, investing into the best sanction Ukraine has invented against Russia's war economy, which is deep strikes. And yes, also working hard to actually bring and try to combine some components, innovative solutions from Lithuania, such as infrared technology-based low-cost cameras to make your drones more effective at night and bad weather conditions. That's just one example of many other things we are trying to do. And apart from Perl, we will also be using SAFE to try to scale up all those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Ambassador. У нас залишається 20 хвилин для ваших запитань. Прошу бути максимально лаконічним.
We have 20 minutes for your questions. Please be brief as possible and say who you address your question to.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for this discussion. I have a question connected with the European Union. So we know that the EU is a great project, but it should be, I think, it should be updated as to the times where we are living in, as the aggressor is coming from the Russian side and different other authoritarian regimes. So what do you think? How should the EU as a project change in terms of decision-making and security cooperation? Thank you. It's a question maybe to all EU member states. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll start with Coalition of the Willing, Ambassador.
Okay, Coalition of the Willing and EU are not exactly the same thing. Actually, you have Canada, New Zealand in the Coalition of the Willing. But definitely, it's interesting because precisely because the EU is very strong and key, but not enough. And this is the reason why, fundamental reason why Coalition in the Willing was created in the first place. So we have to think, well, so it's good to have ad hoc format like this Coalition of the Willing. And it's good also because it gives an impetus to the EU member states and EU institutions who participate into the Coalition of the Willing, actually, well, with some exceptions, to be prepared and to be more active. Then there is a question how to make decisions and how to think about and how to react. I think inside the Coalition of the Willing, it's a very clear intergovernmental traditional thing. So it can be complicated, but it can be pretty straightforward when there is really a political will. And for the time being, this is the case. So let's hope it will continue to do so, including if one day we can deploy this multinational force in the framework of a ceasefire of a Coalition of the Willing. Inside the EU, of course, it's much more complicated because we have rules and regulations, and all this is very clear. It's true that sometimes unanimity in these matters is a problem, and there are ways, technical ways around that, complicated, but still it does exist. And it's true also that, you know, if you look only at the Ukraine issue, you can say war of Russia against Ukraine, you can say, okay, let's get rid of unanimity and in these matters and move forward. Problem is that actually you would create a precedent, and lots of member states are hesitating because actually there are other subjects on which, well, they could not give up on this. So we are in the middle of this. I think that part of at the end of the day, there are only tools. What is really important is the political will. And for this, I think political commitment, political, you know, very high-level meetings such as the European Council's, the next one being a few days actually, are very key. So the EU is very strong to find some technical ways to impossible technical problems. So I think we should just, you know, rely on that. But what is key is to nourish and to further deepen the political will. And this, of course, is also a case of discussions with Ukraine, but also commitments with other partners, including, of course, with the United States.
Thank you. If you allow me to answer your question a little bit philosophically about the European Union, the success, but also part of the curse of the European Union is that it's 27 states who have chosen to pool their sovereignty. Not fully, but partially. And for that we have, as you described very well, made up a set of rules of how to make decisions. This can be frustrating, not only to Ukraine, not only to other partners, not only to ourselves. And I would say that if you look over time, there's a discussion on qualified majority voting inside the European Union. And if you look over time, the number of countries who have agreed to or even want to see us change to that to a greater extent has increased. I am myself a representative of a country who for a long time felt that our only protection was to have that veto, the unanimity. But both because of Ukraine and because of other dramas that have played out inside the European Union, Sweden has changed and is now ready to go for qualified majority voting in some specific areas, maybe not in every scenario, but in including some of the foreign policy decisions. I would also like to support what my French colleague said on political will. At the end of the day, if you look at the decision making, if you look at, for example, the start of the war, the European Union was able to take a number of decisions that nobody thought it would be able to take. I was at the time what is called a European correspondent. That means I supported my foreign minister in making decision in the Foreign Affairs Council. We had 4 Foreign Affairs Councils in 1 week. That week that the full-scale invasion started, and we got down to some decisions that nobody thought was possible. So it's there, but I agree with the premise of your question. We do have to work on our decision-making and how we make our decisions.
Thank you. Maybe just to highlight a couple of points to show that EU is changing. When it comes to Latvia, we have 20 years of experience, and I think in the course of the years, we have seen quite profound transformation of the Union. And as you might know, probably in this current composition of the Commission, we have for the first time Commissioner dealing with defense. And this is a representative of Lithuania. We have much more intimate coordination of the foreign and security policy. We have a big debate about defense budgets. And I think countries represented on this panel are showing the desired threshold of the finance. I think we have more understanding within the Union that countries cannot use only peace dividends and security provided by NATO or by some of EU member states and not contributing to the common European pot. And of course, when it comes to the hard security, NATO is the only game in town in Europe at the moment, but there is a more and more coordination between EU and NATO than ever before. And last maybe point on sanctions. I think again with all criticism which is valid, I think we have had extraordinary coordination on that front of the common external policy. So it's a living organism, and I think overall it's moving in the right direction. Thanks.
Well, basically, I'm myself very much an EU person, basically having started with Lithuania's EU accession, and then having worked in Brussels, well, 10 years ago in that time span. I can only subscribe to what colleagues said, that in terms of the unity, in terms of the recognition of all those threats we are facing, we've never been as united as we are, as the majority of the member states. Now, when it comes to this systemic issue of systemic obstruction of the decision-making process, definitely we need to concentrate on that much more than we do it now. That's Lithuania's perspective, because lately it has become really super difficult to move on any, especially Ukraine, but not only Ukraine-related tracks. And that's why, yes, most likely just focusing on the building this common strategic culture, which used to be a very European way of moving forward, is not sufficient actually to address this issue. So we must concentrate on that, and we must find ways to actually neutralize this obstruction.
Inga, ambassador, будь ласка.
My name is Rita, and we don't live in Soviet Union time, fortunately, so we can talk about it. We all remember the last, one of the biggest or even biggest corruption scandal in Ukrainian history, named Mindzhgate. I mean the situation with business partners of Volodymyr Zelensky. My question is, what is your opinion about it, and how do you think? Will this in any way affect international assistance and support to Ukraine? Thank you.
Кому питання? Any?
The question to whom?
It's quite a difficult, actually, question to answer. Just anyone, please.
So to answer your question, of course, fight against corruption is key, and the credibility of fight against corruption is key for the continuation of the international support. It's because, well, that's the way our societies are organized. This said, and about the specific case you mentioned, actually President Zelensky was in Paris last Monday, and he had more or less the same question you asked. And his answer was to say, well, fight against corruption is key, and in this case, some measures were taken. And actually, the fact that there is an issue demonstrates that the independent investigative bodies are doing their work, and the reason why they are here. And actually, it is to the credit of Ukraine as a democracy to be able to face these things and to fix it, as long as it is fixed, of course. But my point is that, and this is what my president tried to express, and you would never have had such a scandal in Russia, because in Russia there is no corruption, because nobody would say that there is corruption, because nobody is independent to say that there is any corruption. And if anybody would be bold enough to do this, I think that his life expectancy would be pretty short. So actually, it is rather to the credit of Ukraine to tackling this. But of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's true that the credibility of the fight against corruption is key for international support, it's key for the war, it's key for EU accession, it's key for OECD accession, it's key for the IMF, it's key globally. So of course it plays an important role.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing. What I tell Stockholm is that this is a sign that the system is working. And to answer your question, I think institutions are extremely important. Let the institutions do their work, let the system work as it should, because that is the key in Europe. That's a very European answer, actually. But I also agree with you. There is a risk to donor willingness from corruption, but I think drawing the conclusion that we should not expose corruption is the wrong answer to that. We need to deal with it, and we need to do forward, because we need to feel confident that you are able to deal with it, which this is one example of.
I agree with colleagues. Just very shortly, of course, functioning courts, functioning rule of law system, it's a sine qua non for the accession talks. And regardless of the size of the issue or matter, these issues will be very much examined in the course of the coming years. I think on this panel we are very much rooting for your membership in the European Union. We hope that it will happen sooner than later. We hope that the window of opportunity will be opened. And of course, this chapter will be one of the most carefully looked at by the European officials, by the European politicians. And I think, of course, the general message from the European Union is that support is not for granted. We stand ready to support Ukraine as much as possible with the membership, but at the end of the day, it would be up to the ability of the Ukrainian institutions to function. And of course, I will not go into details, but when courts are not able to make decisions for 5 years or 8 years and longer, be it commercial disputes, be it some other disputes, administrative disputes, that would be not the appropriate speed what Europe expects. And I'm saying this as the most probably ardent supporter of Ukraine's integration to the European Union. Thank you.
Well, from our perspective, actually, yes, each and every crisis situation, however unpleasant, is also an opportunity for a fresh start, for a qualitative leap, for a change. And that's something we are very much looking forward to. Also, keeping in mind that, yes, as my Latvian colleague said, sooner rather than later. So basically, Lithuania is of a very strong position that Ukraine must be part of the next EU enlargement wave. And you may have noticed several weeks ago, the European Commission has come up, not only published its progress reports for all the candidate countries, but it already has come up with a public assessment that it is realistic to expect the next EU enlargement to take place by 2030. So that means that time span for a qualitative leap is rather short. Let's do everything possible and impossible to make a maximum use of it.
Дякую. Коли ми говоримо, я маю запитання до всіх.
Thank you. I've got a question to ask of all the panelists. When we speak about today, we cannot but refer to very difficult negotiations around reparation loan. And German Chancellor even announced that he will be visiting Belgium to discuss this issue with the Belgian government. And we know that it's in Belgium that the depository Euroclear depository for the Russian money is. So how realistic is it to expect a positive solution of this issue for Ukraine, which acutely needs this money before the war is over? And as part of the discussion, we see that some EU member states said that it should be a prerequisite for the peace negotiations and peace agreement, peace deal with Ukraine. So what should precede what? What's the sequence?
I don't think that, I'm not convinced that there should be a prerequisite for peace negotiations, but it's up to Ukraine, of course, but there is no prerequisite from outside. This said, the EU reparation loan or whatever solution for bringing very important, significant financial support to Ukraine for the next years and not only for the next weeks, I think is key. And it is key for an obvious reason because of a lack of financing for the budget of Ukraine for the next years and for the needs that Ukraine does have for its defense. So obviously there is a huge responsibility of us together in the EU to find a solution to this. For the time being, I was very optimistic because I thought we were nearly there, but apparently the Belgium difficulty is really strong. Now there has been a new proposal by the Commission 2 days ago. Discussion is going to develop, and we have a European Council in a few days. And I'm quite confident, because the EU is quite smart in finding some technical fixes, usually, that a solution could be found here. So that the huge amount of money which is actually needed could be guaranteed for Ukraine. It does mean to be able to find some good answers, not only technical but political, to what Belgium actually says, and actually some of these questions are pretty legitimate. One of them being, how do you share the risk? And we know in the EU that at the end of the day, sharing the risk is what the EU is about. So we have to do this in a way or the other for this big money for Ukraine. Finally, of course, it would make a lot of sense politically to have this, to go into the direction proposed by the Commission, because it's a way to use the Russian frozen assets. There are other technical possibilities on the table, actually, including joint borrowing from the EU, whatever, which might be less politically attractive. But I think that at the end of the day, it's key that we would find something that would work, because I think Ukraine does need this money. And after a few months, next year, if the money doesn't come, it could be actually a catastrophe. So I'm fairly confident that because the stakes are so high, a solution will be found that would take into account Belgium's concerns.
If you allow me again to be a little bit philosophical, Ukraine is fighting, not of course for its own life, for its right to be Ukraine, but also for our security. We need to help Ukraine do that, including financially. If you sort of boil it down to where the money can come from, there are basically three options. We can do it through our budgets, which is being done right now, with some of us paying a lot, some others paying a little bit less. Some of us having a good financial positions, others in greater difficulties. So this is a difficult way forward. We can do it through common borrowing, which, as you said, is politically contentious and would have implications for much more than just how to finance Ukraine, because it has to do with what the European Union really is. The third option, which is palatable, is the frozen assets. It's obvious it's there. We recognize the concerns of Belgium, but the Swedish position is extremely clear. Do it now. Whether through a loan or another way, it's not super important. I am fundamentally an optimist that we will find a way to do this, even though, as we said during the first question, our decision-making processes can be very frustrating at times.
Maybe just a couple of points. When it comes to accountability for the Russian crimes, we certainly support Ukrainian red lines, and we believe that anything related to the commission of Register of Damages, project for reparations, special tribunal for the crime of aggression, we clearly support that, and we believe that these things are completely non-negotiable. On the financial support for Ukraine, for your knowledge, Nordic Baltic constituency in Washington on IMF is the most vocal supporter of Ukraine. And as my colleagues have said, certainly Latvia will support a kind of solidarity when it comes to this issue in the next forthcoming EU Council. Thank you.
Not much to add, but this is not only a matter of security for Ukraine, this is a matter of security for Europe. So we must find a solution now.
У нас час тільки для одного запитання.
We've only got time for one more question, please.
Good afternoon. European countries are investing in defense-related projects in Ukraine. What specific criteria do your governments use to identify which project they will support? And how those projects should align with your national defense and foreign policy? It's a question for who is ready to answer quickly. Thank you.
Well, I can start by challenging the premise of your question, because defense industry in Sweden is fully private. We don't have a state defense industry, so the government cannot tell our defense industry what to do. That being said, we have signed an innovation partnership with Ukraine in order to facilitate this, and I think we're all aware of the potentially largest business deal between Sweden and Ukraine. The Gripen aircraft is being negotiated also with the participation of the state. I think we are very much aligned with your interests and want to cooperate, but the state does not tell the companies what to do.
I think when it comes to Latvia, of course, we rely on the government of Ukraine, and as far as I know, I'm quite new here, but as far as I know, you have ministry or government-supported businesses, and there are some absolutely private businesses, so we inquire first from the government, and then, of course, we are in a listening mode when it comes to the private companies. Same from Latvia. We have about 50 companies from Latvia partnering with Ukraine on about 200 different projects. And of course, we do internal screenings. In terms of the niches, we concentrate mostly on drones, IT, cyber. Sort of these are the mains which are most developed in Latvia itself. We don't go for something what we are not that familiar with. Thank you.
When it comes to Lithuania, we have several tracks talking about this Lithuanian version of the Danish model. This is gov-to-gov, and in that respect, this is based on Ukrainian needs. but also Lithuania needs to be honest, because it's a very obvious interest for us to contribute as much as possible to Ukraine's success in actually limiting Russia's war economy. And likewise, we are naturally interested in developing joint production in that same field. When it comes to business track, that's where definitely the government has no say. And right now, there are several lines of conversations between Ukrainian and Lithuanian businesses, including on localizing production based on Ukrainian technologies in Lithuania. Thank you.
Maybe very, very shortly, because lots have been said already. Yes, of course, the business to business there is no direct link with the government, but at the same time, you can have some public tools to give a direction or to support more clearly some kind of investments. You can, for example, take part of a risk if the private company has got to borrow some money. So you can guarantee part of this loan, or you can bring some public money into a venture at some point. So there are ways to deal with that. Obviously, it's up to firstly to the Ukrainian authorities and to the Ukrainian army to define what the current priorities are for them, and we are here to support that, obviously. But also it has to match our own views of what is a priority, both in Ukraine but for us. And at the same time, I think what is really key is that we would produce, both in Ukraine and in France or in all our countries, military equipments that can be used at the same time by the Ukrainian army, but also by our own forces. And definitely in Ukraine, there is added value. Well, there are technologies here for interceptors, drones, for example, that nobody has in the world. So there is a huge added value, huge incentives, also from our side, actually, to do that jointly and to learn from Ukraine. So it's a win-win thing. But it's clear that we have to deal with the fact that the main actors are private. So we have to convince them to some extent. Yeah.
Thank you so much, all members of this panel, which is called Code of Diplomacy.